If you've got ears, stick your fingers in them right now because I'm about to work blue.
Welcome, Gothamites, to another episode of the Arkham Sessions. My name is Brian Ward. With me, as always, is the psychologist to the superheroes, superheroines, and supervillains of Gotham City and beyond. She's Dr. Drea Letamendi. Hello, Drea.
Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
Not great. Not going to lie. Not great.
Yeah. Well, we certainly didn't expect to start the year in a citywide emergency. Mm-hmm. I think the first thing I want to say is, of course, we're safe. Our home is currently safe. Our pets are safe. Our loved ones are safe. And we are honestly just trying to manage everything day by day and do the best we can to be prepared if we are in a situation where we need to evacuate our home.
For starters, for people who don't know what crisis she's talking about, we are recording this on Sunday, January 12th, 2025. The last week has been wildfire after wildfire in Los Angeles, where we live. We have had communities completely leveled, burned to the ground. Communities that aren't even really usually in the path of wildfires are now just gone. We have had friends and dear loved ones who have had to evacuate from their own homes and have been living out of suitcases for the last several days. As you mentioned, Drea, you and I have not had to evacuate. We're not in imminent danger as of now, but at any given moment, it feels like there could be 2 fires or 9 fires around us at any time. So, the Santa Ana winds are about to pick up again in the next couple of days. So things could get even worse, even as they seem to be not necessarily getting better, but plateauing at the moment.
Right. And for folks who don't live in Los Angeles and are wondering how and why so many communities are impacted, you named one really serious reason that these wildfires have spread into residential areas, but also there are multiple fires across town. We have one to the east of us. We have one to the south and west of us. There was one kind of approaching the area that we call home, broadly speaking. So I'm
not exaggerating when I say that if you went onto the app that everyone is glued to right now, there was literally, at one point a couple of days ago, there were literally 11 fires just in our vicinity.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we're not out of the crisis. For folks who live in Los Angeles and are struggling right now, our hearts are with you. Certainly, we have not recorded a podcast in more than a couple of weeks, so we are off schedule. I know that many LA-based podcasts are managing their schedules and delaying their episodes and so forth. What we ask of folks who aren't local to Los Angeles is please have a lot of grace for us. You may wonder, if you're not living in one of these areas, what are the risks? And there's just a lot of collective trauma going on, anywhere from being constantly on edge to feeling empathy for our loved ones who are displaced or who have lost homes. And the air quality is poor. The risk of additional fires is real. So we're all on edge. And, I'll say thank you so far to the folks who have reached out to us. Folks on our Discord have reached out to us. That was so kind of you. It was so lovely to read those notes. And also, we didn't know quite when to record an episode. And, I just want to say that we're in a headspace to do this today. For folks who maybe are new to the show, we are a show about mental health and well-being, trauma psychology, relationship psychology, social psychology, all of those topics. But we do try to have a very positive lens. We try to have a positive lean, and actually we consider ourselves a podcast that's more kind of in the entertainment area too, because we look at media, we look at those story narratives, and we just kind of try to have fun. So our show today is not going to be about anything about this topic as far as disaster recovery and psychology.
But if we're not the same Drea and Brian that,
yes, please
that you're
know,
used to,
please know that we're a little distracted. And also, I just want to thank folks who continue to listen. Thank you for sticking with us, even though we're off schedule. Please continue to listen to your LA-based podcasts. We do this because we love doing this, and we have the ability to be in our studio to do this, and that's not the case for everybody. So thank you so much for your understanding, your grace. Know that people react to these things in very different ways. Some folks are bewildered and numb. Some folks are very stressed out. Some folks react to this with a proactive approach, just kind of like, what can I do? Where can I help? And
we do have options for that.
We do.
Yeah, the reason that we decided today was the day to actually sit down and have what it will likely be a lighthearted-ish conversation about Harley Quinn, the TV series, was the decision to donate. And that's what we're going to do. Every penny that we make on our Patreon, patreon.com/Arkham Sessions, every penny that we make on our TeePublic, where you can get Arkham Sessions t-shirts and merchandise and all of that, through the end of February, will be going 100% to two different organizations. One of them is the American Red Cross, which is obviously known for its support of people and families and communities in need. And then the other is one that Drea specifically picked out, and that is Pasadena Humane. For those who don't know, the Altadena fire is located right next door to Pasadena. And so many animals, whether they be pets or whether they be wild animals, because we're talking about mountainous ranges and lots of brush and forestry up in there, beautiful trails to hike and all of that. Animals are being displaced, are being, found in need of water and shelter and food and medicine. And so we are going to be donating 50% of all the proceeds from our Patreon and from our TeePublic between now and the end of February to these two organizations. So please come chip in, even if you only decide to stay for a month at our Patreon, or buy a single t-shirt or mug from our TeePublic. It will help those in need. So please, we encourage you to come and do that. In the meantime, Drea, we've got our bug out bags by the door.
Yep.
We've got our most important needs and possessions, ready to leave at any given moment. Should we be giving an evacuation notice, which we're not anticipating. However, I am anticipating a lot of helicopter traffic above us, and that's just not something that we can edit out of the show. So these helicopters are dumping water and other chemical flame retardants over these massive fires. So if you hear constant barrages of helicopters, please know that they're doing good things for us in the community here in Los Angeles. So that being said, let's move on to our more lighthearted conversation. We are, of course, still covering the Harley Quinn TV series, which you can see on Max, and we are looking at the episode You're a Damn Good Cop, Jim Gordon. And of course, by that title, you can guess we are going to be talking about one of my favorite characters in the Gotham City universe, a man that I have no idea how he's keeping it together. And in this particular incarnation, He's not.
No.
But it'll be a good episode as we talk about Jim and Batman and their relationship. And, of course, his relationship with a new pal. Kind of a throwback to something we've seen on previous episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Drea, let's talk about You're a Damn Good Cop, Jim Gordon.
Let's do it.
Well, let's start out with the beginning of the episode. A heist has, of course, taken place. Harley Quinn and her gang, Sans, Poison Ivy, have robbed a local museum of King Tut's tomb, specifically to use as a coffee table / ottoman. And it doesn't take long before that's completely wrecked in the apartment or in the their new headquarters.
Their new headquarters. They're now,
which is the mall,
located in a decrepit mall.
Yep.
And that's their lair.
Yeah.
I do want to say, and by the way, the broader goal that Harley has is to be welcomed into the Legion of Doom.
Yes.
And
for one purpose, not because she specifically wants to be a member of the Legion of Doom, but they have gotten her to finally admit that what she really wants to do is rub her success in the face of her ex-boyfriend, the Joker, and that's what we've been saying all along.
Right,
is that's really the only reason she even wants to be a supervillain.
How long do you think this season will center this unmet need she has?
I don't think it'll end anytime soon.
I ask this because it's quite entertaining. It's really still well written, and there's a ton of psychology. I just am growing a little tired of her fixation with wanting to be, valued.
Welcome to
by
having
him.
that friend who is fixated on their former relationship. Like it's
so frustrating.
That's the thing is there is no switch to simply turn this on and off. So she is as fixated as she is going to be at the moment. And while she is, of course, having breakthroughs, she's not necessarily going to just flip off those emotions.
You have
the
really
good or the bad.
earned your honorary psych degree because I think I needed that reminder.
It comes from 10 years of having done this show with you.
That's a good point. We're growing a little frustrated with this obsession to be seen in a good light by the Joker. And a lot of what she does is to seek that appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And, underneath that, there's probably a need to be loved by him. And we know that he doesn't have the emotional capacity to do that. So it seems, I think, especially for Poison Ivy, who's counseled her on this, it seems like a goal that is just unachievable.
Yeah. They decide that the one way that they can ensure that they earn a spot as a nominee for inclusion into this, I guess, prestigious society of supervillains would be to rob Bruce Wayne. She's not necessarily wrong. He's the shining sun of Gotham City. So they decide to go to Wayne Tower and pull a heist that ends up taking some very experimental tech from the building. And the bat signal goes off. Batman, of course, goes to see Jim Gordon on top of the GCPD. And he assumes that this is about the heist so that he can get additional information, etc. And it turns out that Jim really just wants to talk about his marriage, which is falling apart. Their love life is not what he hopes it would be. She is disgusted by him. She will not touch him. She does not want to talk to him. And of course, when you see Jim Gordon, you kind of know why.
He is ragged.
Gotham City has destroyed this man, as I think it
sure.
would most people in a position of power who's trying to keep the city together.
There is a moral decay, a physical deterioration, but is this man fit for duty? anybody.
No.
And I know it's Gotham City, so there aren't these additional checks. He may be the most appropriate person to be in this position given.
Here's why
the
he's not.
situation.
He's not even thinking about the job right now.
Yeah.
Which is why he should not be doing the job right now. He is so emotionally compromised by his own home life. There is no balance between work and life. It's just how devastating his life is. And when Batman sort of berates him for the incorrect use of the bat signal and literally takes the bat off of the giant light, he gets angry about it and realizes, oh, Batman's not my friend, because Batman keeps reminding him, we are not friends, Jim.
Right.
We're colleagues. And
What do you make of that? Because since the animated series, which was an early 90s show, these two have been in this collegial relationship for sure. But there are some stories where, because of what they've gone through and because of their shared mission, they're quite close.
Yeah.
And I would even argue, aside from Alfred, this is somebody who knows, I mean, certainly in this incarnation, he doesn't know Bruce Wayne.
There are incarnations of the Jim Gordon story where it's heavily implied that
he knows.
he's always known that he's actually a really great detective, and it doesn't take a lot to uncover who this might be, and that he chooses not to say anything.
It's an arrangement.
Even the unspoken rule of, I'm not even going to say it to Batman because he doesn't need me to say it, and we'll just keep on as we're going on.
Yeah.
In this particular case, I think he's just so aloof that he doesn't know and he doesn't care. Are you asking how I feel?
You mean Batman doesn't care?
Oh, no, that Jim doesn't know or care who Batman is because he's not even really thinking about who Batman might be at this point. Are you asking how I feel about the divide between that Batman, the partition in their relationship, the we're colleagues, not friends? I believe, and we find out later that this is true, that this is just Batman trying to keep people at an arm's length. We see later in the Batcave, his screensaver are what would be considered happy moments shared with Jim Gordon, birthday parties, etc., where Batman is still dressed as Batman and is still brooding in the photos while Jim is having a great time. And it's very clear that the two of them are more than just colleagues. But he is not someone who is meant to be the therapist to Jim in times of crisis with his personal life, while there are also times of crises happening within Gotham City that Batman needs to take care of. So there is a difference, I'm here for you, just not right now sort of situation.
It's almost as if Batman wants to, it's like he wants Jim to apply the same boundaries and grit and resilience that he has around how to balance work
shut it down
and life. Yes, like when Batman comes on the scene, you realize he could just as easily be as worn out and as affected by the work, but it's almost as if he wants Jim to be just as detached and just as compartmentalized as he is.
And to be fair, in most incarnations, at least in the comics, Barbara Gordon, Babs's mother, is not normally living at home with them. There is no family.
Like home life.
Jim has chosen the survival of Gotham City in most incarnations over the survival of his own home life. And maybe this is a prequel. Maybe this is before Jim, gets on the wagon and gets that train back on the rails toward a healthy mental health status. But as of right now, the guy's losing it. And again, I think it's one of my favorite incarnations of Jim Gordon because I don't believe that there's a police commissioner in this country that would be able to handle what Gotham City goes through on a nightly basis and still manage to come across as anything other than disheveled. I mean, this is a guy whose own police department doesn't solve the crimes. They just sort of farm it out to Batman.
Right.
And there is a joke that Jim makes where he says, yeah, after all the cases I've helped him with, he just abandons me. and you realize, you know, the comical nature of their relationship. Batman just sort of gets the information and then goes from there. But
yeah, you know, I was going to save this to the end of the show, but we could do a quick and dirty assessment of just how burnt out Jim Gordon is. I think.
How would you do that? How would you do an assessment of this particular incarnation of Jim Gordon?
And I'd say just at face value, we've noticed some things that concern us, and face validity is important and relevant. You know, just seeing someone. We used to use the phrase in social work, tore up from the floor up.
That's an official phrase in social work? All right.
It just means exactly what this man looks like. You are exhausted from your crisis and response work. You're exhausted from the long hours. You are deteriorated from the number of cases that you manage, as well as the intensity of the cases. So when we look at those different factors and categories, we aren't simply addressing that the individual is presenting with tiredness, exhaustion, depression, things like that. I'd even say suicidality in some extreme cases. But we also look at the working environment, because no one is in a bubble, you know. So we look at some of the top factors that lead to workplace burnout, especially for first responders. And by the way, I'm pulling from the research and the work that I do as a consultant and as a trainer, specifically for humanitarian workers, social workers, other counselors, and first responders. And what we look at is, you know, what are the types of situations they're responding to? And as I mentioned, the number of cases, a lot of counselors, for instance, especially now, are highly impacted. So we look at, you know, how many cases do you have to manage on a single day, a single week? What are the intensity of those cases? Are they all high intensity cases? And then something that I think people don't think about when it comes to workplace burnout is the kind of supervision someone gets. Are you able to have moments of debriefing and processing and a close relationship with what we would consider like the person you report to, a supervisor on record? Who does Jim have?
Yeah.
If anything, I almost want to say Batman isn't his supervisor by any means.
Well, no.
But he is someone they report
indirectly.
To. Yeah,
Bruce Wayne probably owns that police department in some way, shape, or form.
So they kind of they report to each other. They check in with one another. They work on the same cases. So I'd say he's sort of like the closest figure. And whenever we have a supervisory relationship that is not close, that is somewhat demanding, that isn't really reflective, isn't understanding, that's a red flag. Mm-hmm. We look at the opposite of that to kind of, to prevent and protect people from burnout, which is a supervisor who would say, let's talk about when it's time for you to step down, step out, go home, take a vacation, which is certainly what Jim needs.
Yeah.
But I have three things, and let me just present them to you, and then you can tell me whether you think he has these three elements that would tell us he's likely experiencing workplace burnout.
Okay.
These might be pretty obvious, but the first one is exhaustion. Does this person seem like they can recover their sense of self?
No.
So clear.
Doesn't even seem like he's trying.
Right. So clearly exhausted. The second one is cynicism. Does Jim seem like he's losing sight, losing meaning of the work, losing hopefulness around the work?
That's an interesting one. On the surface, you would say yes, but I don't even think he's even in the work at the moment. So is it fair to say that he's cynical if he's not even present in the work? He's almost like he's past the cynicism stage.
Or he may not exactly be there. And the third one is an efficiency, which I think is probably what you're talking about.
100%.
Losing track of the job, disconnected from goals, just like not
inappropriate use of bat signals.
Yeah. So he's close to meeting all three. And there's additional signs we look for, things like emotional agitation.
Yep.
Prone to withdrawing from the work. I think we've seen he's kind of checked out.
Yeah.
Being unable to think well.
It's funny. He is withdrawing from the work, but he's trying to connect to other human beings.
Yeah. Say more about that.
Well, his whole relationship with Batman in this particular episode is Jim wishing he had a friend that he could talk to about his personal life. And so he's not withdrawing from society per se. He's simply not focusing at all on his career. So if you're talking about simply workplace burnout, then yes, he is burnt out entirely. But to some degree, whether it's healthy or not is another conversation. He is reaching out to people that he considers friends.
That's a good sign. It's actually a really good sign to say,
Do I also get a few more points, a few more creds to my
continuing education for the renewal of your fake license.
Yeah.
It's a good sign for him to seek connection and to seek problem solving and want to get better. The appropriateness of him bringing up the intimacy or lack of intimacy with his wife is, a concern, but that could also be a sign of burnout. Like your boundaries are off. You're not necessarily thinking straight.
Yeah.
Your emotions. Some people will kind of like numb out and they will be drained of emotions, and others will do the opposite. Like they're just emotionally very exaggerated, emotionally reactive in a number of ways. They may overshare. They may act inappropriately. They may do what Jim's doing, which is to seek a coworker and kind of get overly personal, and not something about work, but to talk about something that's personally related. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because usually we're talking about Bruce Wayne experiencing burnout, and we're seeing Jim, who I think in a lot of different versions of this character is usually very human and very impacted by things, but efficient, right? So I'm finding this character to be deeply disturbed, and he definitely needs support, which leads to how he begins to resolve this issue.
Yeah, let's talk about his new friend. So in a slight throwback to a previous episode where we learned, and specifically of Batman the Animated Series, where we learned that pieces of Clayface can be in some way, they can have their own sentience if they're away from him for too long. During the heist, he loses, his right hand basically from his right forearm down. It's trapped in the Wayne Industries building as the gates come down, and he tries to do the Indiana Jones, I'm going to grab my hat from the other side and pull it, only he doesn't make it, and he ends up severing that piece of his arm. And normally we would just be like, what, he can't just regrow his arm? But I do appreciate this. They're saying there is a finite amount of clay within him, and if he's going to take on his form, his true form, he can't simply shift more clay from somewhere else to make his hand.
Oh, okay. So he can't grow back a significant piece of
his own
like a
body
limb.
because he doesn't have that clay. So
can he make himself into a smaller clay face with the clay that he has?
right. So someone would think, you would think yes, but
Why doesn't he do that? He's just a little
because
smaller.
he's Clayface, and in this particular Clayface is dumb. He's not the smartest folks. Even going so far as to, whenever he does become a smaller character, a human being, whenever he takes the form of a police officer, that police officer is also missing their right arm, and so yes, to comic effect, Clayface is not whole and desperately wants to reclaim that part of him that is missing. Meanwhile, Harley is hyper focused on herself. She is not bothered at all by the fact that her friend and ally is missing a pivotal piece of their own body. She is really only interested in how she can move forward with her mission to join this league. And it really turns out that the show is very much about everyone just sort of thinking about themselves and not others. And once Harley comes to the conclusion that it's wrong to only think about herself, she then kicks her help into gear. She helps Clayface regain his arm. His arm all this time has basically been a brown, muddy version of the Hamburger Helper logo.
Oh, okay.
Or mascot, the white glove with 3 fingers and a thumb and a red nose. It's basically become that. It's a speaking, sentient, childlike voice, acknowledging that it's just an infant in its new life, and it befriends Jim Gordon and listens to everything Jim has to say, regardless of how vile and descriptive it might be. And the two of them really buddy up.
Well, he starts off as a piece of evidence, like a literal piece of evidence, and
Evidence.
What?
Evidence.
Evidence?
Yes, because it can't say evidence.
Oh.
So it's like, I'm just a piece of evidence.
And this little creature is voiced by Tom Kenny.
Tom Kenny, SpongeBob.
So very cute. And Jim Gordon initially knows that not only is this little being sentient, but holds all the memories, ideas, cognitions of its primary figure, its primary owner, which is Clayface.
Yeah.
So Clayface knows where the lair is. Clayface knows where Harley and her team is. So it starts out as
An interrogation.
a specific dynamic, and then over time they get quite close.
Yep.
I would look at this like, yes, there is a genuine closeness, but Jim is susceptible and vulnerable to just bond, to just have anybody understand his experience. And this is the first person who actually listens and sees him.
And offers advice and help.
And so while I appreciate their relationship, I also see a part of this as almost similar to even a counseling relationship. Like, this isn't meant to be a long-term bond. This is somebody who is a stranger to you, and yet you're telling them all these personal things, and you're...
Well, do you think that that's the case in the moment that it's happening? Because Jim admits that he started out this ruse with the understanding that he would get the arm to reveal all the information that Jim needed. But by the end, neither one of them wants to say goodbye to each other.
I think their attachment to each other is real.
Yeah.
And I think that the attachment formed because of both of their situations. Jim's emotional vulnerability and unmet needs. And the little hand's essential displacement and loneliness. Like what an experience to have to suddenly wake up to this existence. And based on a very, for us, an older episode, years ago, we know that Clayface in some stories is able to have like a separate, like when a piece of him is broken off, that is a separate entity. That's a separate identity. So this isn't Clayface.
The further it gets and the longer it is separate, it becomes a separate.
Yeah. So this little hand is sort of like gaining its own individual memories, individuation, achieving his own goals, his own ideas. And I think there's some real grief in this.
And the best part is there at the end, and I may have laughed a little too long. It might just be where I am right now emotionally, but as it's running back to Clayface, it turns and tells Jim, "Thank you. I will never forget these," and then just becomes absorbed by Clayface. So it is forming memories that will, who knows, maybe Clayface now has a relationship he didn't even know he has.
Do you think that this little hand's memories then gets
That's what I'm saying. It's possible that Clayface now, because remember, and I realize that this is going back to a TV show that this is not, right? So, but remember, the whole point of the little girl that was found, wandering the streets of Gotham was, and it's been a long while, but I believe it was basically being used as like a spot. Like it was being used to see things, learn things, come back
like bring back information.
Come back and bring back information to Clayface.
Like a little scout.
And I imagine that it's not simply by standing in front of Clayface and revealing what it saw. I'm guessing that once absorbed, Clayface now has the insight into what that being saw. So it's very possible that Clayface has now absorbed this emotional connection, whether he realized he would or not, to Jim Gordon.
If we go into dissociative disorders and multiple personalities, I'm going to lose my mind.
I don't think that's
that's not where this is going.
That's not where that's going.
Okay.
It's still a part of him, but while Clayface wasn't there technically as a whole, Clayface was certainly there experiencing these things separately from himself.
It does kind of remind me of IFS. Have we ever talked about IFS or internal family systems?
That sounds familiar. In fact, it may have even been the episode where we covered this. Did we maybe talk about it then?
Where, of course, it's an exaggerated version of this, but we all have pieces to our identities, our personalities, who we call the self. And so each of us has this little hand creature that on its own might have specific wishes and desires and ideas and memories. This is not to say it's a separate identity, not like multiple personalities, but a facet of our identities. There could be a part of us that is brave and courageous and proactive. There could be a part of us that's scared and childlike. So this is perhaps a really good representation of that.
Yeah.
And all sorts of different, I just named two examples of like different facets.
But the idea is that there are many facets to our personalities, and any one of them could be separate from the others at any given moment.
Yeah.
Or focused on more than any other. Yeah. Very, very, very possible. And then certainly we could talk about Harley a little bit, but Harley is essentially Harley. She's not really making any progress until the end, when she realizes that she has used this opportunity solely for her own benefit. Once she realizes that a new family member of hers is in need, she kicks it into gear. So she is making progress to that degree. How much of that will carry over to the next episode, we don't know. But I have a feeling that what the writers are doing, whether consciously or not, are replacing those moments or those feelings of attachment to Joker with other feelings of attachment to other people as we go. And the more and more that, you know, come into play
Right.
as we see them happen, the less and less Joker will be her driving
And it
force.
helps to adjust her attachment style as well. You know, what is it like to be in a relationship with someone who is loyal, with someone who's genuine, doesn't lie to you, doesn't necessarily see you as less than,
Yeah.
as someone they can dominate, control,
Yeah.
and gaslight. She needs to kind of relearn what it's like to trust other people. And I would totally agree with you. I think some of her self-centeredness or inability to kind of think about how other people are impacted. There are a couple points where others have let her know, like, you kind of left people behind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Clayface was in a serious personal trauma and you didn't attend to that. And at one point, King Shark was left in
prison.
prison, and they totally forgot about that. I mean, he's fine. But it's this idea of this protective, guarded self-centeredness being a trauma response from the relationship she had with Joker.
You just brought up an interesting parallel to the first episode of this, when she was just left in prison and Joker didn't even think about her.
Oh, yeah.
And didn't come break her out.
She was a tool. She was an instrument to him, and she ended up being arrested and put in prison.
Right. And then
Similarly,
she forgot about King Shark until someone reminded her that she left someone behind. But then, unlike Joker, she actually took the step to go and break him out. She blows
Right.
up his cell wall and pulls him out of prison.
Right.
We can also talk about Dr. Psycho. He is livid over a critic's critique of the team, specifically harsh things said about him.
Well, a YouTube influencer.
Yes.
Is what I would say.
Yes, a YouTube influencer, sort of cloaked and masked in a disguise, a virtual disguise, an avatar, has a lot to say about this team, and most of it is negative, and a lot of that is aimed at Dr. Psycho. When he tracks down the IP address, he learns that it is his son, his own flesh and blood son, from whom he is estranged. His ex-wife is currently living with another person, and their son, who is very much the I think it's every cliched thing that you think of the divorced kid where he's wearing the all black, he's got a skull on his shirt or some sort of gothy kind of whatever.
I think it's
they've
an
given him
anarchy
his
sign.
emo haircut. They've given him that look.
Yeah, he's a very angsty teen.
On the heavy side, they're playing with all of those cliches, the tropes.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting was Dr. Psycho was basically saying that the reason he is such a bad father is because he wants to give the kid as traumatic and emotional childhood as possible so that he becomes the best supervillain he can. And, he wants him to follow in dad's footsteps, and you can't do that without a tragic
Sure.
backstory. And in this case, it was abandonment by my father. And the two of them reveal that they actually love. They use the words hate, like, I
Yeah.
hate you, Dad. I hate you too,
But
son.
they see each other's
Yes.
affection in their own ways.
And then that critic at the end comes back and brings up the fact that Dr. Psycho in particular deserves commendation for being such a good supervillain in the team. So Dr. Psycho is even trying to work on his own familial relationships.
Yeah, it's a nice B story that goes along with, I think, the larger concept of trying to be aware and reflect on like what kind of relationship you have with people, especially the people that are closest to you, and in what ways are you kind of repeating and cycling through harmful patterns.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes well with the main story. I do hope, though, as we're wrapping this up, I do hope we let me just genuinely appreciate, and I think this conversation, I think your perspective has helped me do this, that I see where this is going. It isn't about the Joker. Like, it never really is about the Joker. And we start there with the I don't know, the MacGuffin, or like the main, like the story, the plot. And we start there, but it's not about that. It ends up being about other important developments and growth and self-reflection that I think, especially for our show, that gives us a lot to talk about. Yeah. Having said that, I really do hope we move into a different, larger plot, that maybe it's Batman, maybe it's something else going on.
It will not be Batman. I don't think Batman is going to take, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think Batman is going to take a much bigger role. Otherwise it becomes a show about Batman.
Sure.
I think this is going to continue to be Harley's story, and that will come with plenty of references to the Joker, plenty of obsessions that involve getting the Joker back in some way, shape, or form. I think it's going to be a slow process. Mm-hmm. Now, where we end up in season 5 of this show, I have no idea.
Sure.
But as of right now, I would say to probably expect more of the same throughout the first season of the show.
Fair.
It might mean that we have to cover season 2.
Well, we don't decide what we cover.
We don't decide what we cover. I'll tell you how you can decide in a moment. But Drea, you ended up liking this episode?
I did. I ended up really liking this episode.
Good.
Really enjoyable. Plenty to talk about. And certainly I grow more close to the characters, especially Harley. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, I think I'm a little bit more like relating to Poison Ivy, even though she's not always a huge part of each episode.
I think she's basically our proxy. She's the normal person looking at this group and just being like, you're all idiots. I'm going to have to come in and help.
She's around toxic people.
Yeah. Yeah. Drea, why don't you tell the good folks where they can find you online?
You can find me on social media at Dr. Drea Psychology. My website is drdreapsychology.com. Speaking of your insights, talking to the listeners now, speaking of your insights, your ideas, your what you want more of, go to the website, leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And on that website, you can also leave not just an email, but a SpeakPipe voice message, which we can play here on the show, only if you want us to. Otherwise, just talk to us and let us know your thoughts in general. You can find me on Instagram. I am B_Ward028. You can find us both on Instagram as The Arkham Sessions. You can find us on Facebook. Like I said, come join us, patreon.com/Arkham Sessions. The perks are basically you get these episodes a day before everyone else. And in some cases, you might even get video versions of these podcasts. You can see just how worn out I look right now as we put this up, and then a season later you will get to see this on YouTube, but on Patreon you get to see it a full season early. So when this season drops on YouTube, they're gonna be like, wow, they're really down about something. Come join Patreon so you know what we're down about in the moment. You can also join our family over at Fanbase Press. They would love to have you. They are a fantastic group of people who do their own comics, they do their own news, and they do plenty of other podcasts. So go check them out. And until next time, I want to thank those patrons who have helped make this episode and all of our episodes possible, starting with Mike Ficklin, Lindsay B., Dr. Jerome Anderson, Antonio Lopez, Kevin Ortel, Hero's Journey Fitness, Todd Stashwick, Trevor Schwartz, Swara Salih, Frank Muller, Mark Pepper, Jamiroquai J, SK, and my father, Carl Ward. Thank you all for all of your contributions and all of your help. Come join patreon.com/Arkham Sessions, and every penny we raise from Patreon and from TeePublic, again, where you can pick up t-shirts, mugs, stickers, whatever you like with our logo and more on them, we will donate to the American Red Cross and to Pasadena Humane for those animals. Till next time, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Drea Letamendi.
And together we are
the Arkham Sessions.
Not good at emotion.
Or vocabulary.